Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And in this lesson, I wanted to deal with this the speed in which this technology is moving in. Okay, and more so the wearables. As you can see, this is from Zero Hedge, and the headline reads the Wearables Trap, right? How the government plans to monitor, score, and control you. And it's, I think they mentioned it somewhere later in this article, but they call it like this, I think it's the bait and switch, where they bait you in and then they switch up, because ultimately their goal, right, is not going to be just wearables. It's going to be wearables are included, right? They're part of it, but it's not going to be just that. And if you look at how innovation and like technology has advanced, and you look at the direction in which it has been advancing in, knowing what the end goal is and knowing and understanding prophecy, you'll be able to connect the dots that, I see why they're going in this direction, right? Like if you were told ahead of time that a certain individual plans to take control over the transportation system, for example, right? And then they come on the scene and they have a whole bunch of money, and all of a sudden, like when you look at where their investments are, it's always in the transportation sector and so on and so forth. You sort of piece two and two together and say, I see why they're not investing in food, right? Or they're not investing in fishing or medical stuff, because their goal is in this direction. So it only makes sense that they would invest and move in that given direction. So when you see this here with like these this push for like more wearables, more tracking, more data about you, it's in the direction of ending up with a implantable, right, inside of you. So it says here how the government plans to monitor, score, and control you. And ultimately, this is because of that God complex they have, right? They want to be able to achieve a status. By they, I'm talking about the super rich families that are behind the scenes and are pulling the strings, right, and giving orders in different governments and so on to push a certain agenda. They want to be able to have everybody tracked and tagged with their technology, because then that gives them the ability to have total control or world domination over people, and almost be like a god onto the people of the earth by having knowledge of who you are, where you are, what are you thinking, right? Because as we go into this article, it mentions basically this starts to go down the line of being able to detect, is somebody lying to you or not? Is somebody angry? What is somebody thinking? Right? And in their commercials, I forget exactly which one it was. If it was for WEF or it was I forget where it was, but they mentioned that the eventually they would, and they said this in the commercial, right? They said nobody's going to be left behind. And then they said that eventually the concept of humans is going to cease to exist, because everybody to some degree is going to have some form of like augmentation about them, that you won't just be like a plain human, that will be, non-existent. And then they mentioned how even in your thoughts, they're going to have to basically secure your thoughts. So in order to make sure that inside of your head is a safe space, they would have to have access into your thoughts so they can protect you and make sure it's a safe space, right? They said that openly in their commercial, or their ad or their promotion video, whatever you want to call it. And I'll see if I can find it. But that's pretty much, why do they want that? Because that gives them that power. They want the ability to be like the Most High. But we know, according to prophecy, they're not going to succeed at that. Bodily autonomy, the right to privacy and integrity over our own bodies, is rapidly vanishing. The debate now extends beyond forced Vs or invasive searches to include biometric surveillance, wearable tracking, and predictive health profiling. We are entering a new age of algorithmic authoritarian control where our thoughts, moods, and biology are monitored and judged by the state. And that's where you get, the concept of a thought crime, right? Or arresting somebody before they've committed a crime because, according to the data, they will commit a crime. So you need to get them now. I think the movie was Minority Report, if I'm not mistaken. Minority Report. Yeah, I think this is it. Let's see if it'll give us some information about it. Not the cast. Okay. Based on a story by famed science fiction writer Philip K. Dick, Minority Report is an action detective thriller set in Washington, D.C. in 2054, where police utilize a psychic technology. See? Technology. So through technology, they're able to achieve, psychic insights or abilities to arrest and convict murderers before they commit their crime. So the pre-crime unit. That's pretty interesting, huh? So coming back here, where we at? Right. So the thoughts, moods, and biology are monitored and judged by the state. This is the dark promise behind the newest campaign by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., President Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services, to push for a future in which all Americans wear biometric health tracking devices. Now, what you are starting to see, at least should have been starting to see, is the tactic that they used doesn't just apply to the president or the administration. It applies to the people he puts in power as well, right? So what do I mean? When you had when you had Joe Biden in office, they deliberately had his administration or his term be one that became so bad that people were willing to say like, yo, anybody but this guy, right? Bring Trump up in there. And what he did was basically like an alley-oop, right? They look like opposing sides, but they're two wings on the same bird, right? Two sides of the same coin. So by making the country so bad, you give you make the next guy coming in saying he's going to fix that look better because people want it fixed. So that's what Trump ran on. He ran on a lot of things that he could point out that became a problem or weren't fixed by the previous administration. Similarly, when you look at the health situation with the whole demic and all of that, people got very, very angry and tired of these mandates, masks mandates. You got to get the Vanessa. You can't do this. You can't work here. You can't do this and all that. People were fed up with it. And when you had somebody else, like they appointed this guy, right, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who it's like, we're going to change the way it was before and do this and do that. Once again, it's on that basis of building trust with the people because it's almost like, hey, I'm the guy you can run to from your attacker or from the other guy that you don't like. And then eventually they become worse than the first. And then that's the cycle they've had going for the past God knows how long, right? You vote one way one side this time, and then they become so bad, now you want the other side. Then they become so bad, now you want the other side. And that's the illusion of choice because each term, right, and each switch and each administration that comes in, what they're doing is furthering the same plan. They're furthering the same agenda. Okay? I'll give you another example here. You get with a guy, right? You get with one guy, he yells at you. Okay? You're upset at that. So you go with another guy. This guy now beats you. That's even worse. So you get with another guy. This guy beats you, emotionally abuses you, and drop kicks you. Okay, so now you go back to the other guy. And it's just like a badminton, like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But it's all working, in this case, right, to the same unified goal. Because the reason why when the Democrats come in there, you have a problem is because they're doing shit that's pushing this agenda. So you say, no, 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 we don't want them. They're destroying the country. So now let's get the Republicans in there. They'll fix it up. So they come up in there and they're like, all right, thank you for setting it up nicely. We'll start off looking like we're gonna fix it up, and then we'll continue to plan. We'll continue to plan. And when the people catch on, they'll get pissed off, and then they'll say, let's bring the Democrats back in. And then when they do that, the Democrats will say, oh yeah, well, let's fix the mess they made, and then they'll look like they do it in the beginning. They'll run campaigns on it, and then they'll end up continuing the plan, which is to make things worse and worse and worse. So before you know it, you're constantly switching back and forth for reprieve, but you don't see that each time, right? Each every 4 years or every however long that passes, it's gotten closer and closer to the direction or the end goal that they've wanted. That is the illusion of choice, right? That people don't see. When you're looking at a those puppet shows where you may have two puppets on the stage, and behind the scenes is one man, and it's just his right hand and his left hand and controlling them. But when you look on the stage, it looks like two completely different sides. They might be disagreeing with each other and X, Y, and Z. But when you look up and you see that it's one man, then it's the same brain, it's the same mind, just two hands in the same body. So back to the article. This is the dark promise behind the newest campaign by Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., President Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services, to push for a future in which all Americans wear biometric health tracking devices. Under the guise of public health and personal empowerment, this initiative is nothing less than the normalization of 24/7 bodily surveillance. And then they'll code it in something like, oh, this will help cases where, if something happens, we can detect it right away and we can send help, and, it can reduce ailments or deaths or the amount of cases where somebody is sick and nobody finds out until it's too late. That's what they do. They capitalize off of your fear of things that haven't happened yet, or your fear of things that have happened before in the past, and then they get you to buy into these things. Under the guise of public health and I think I just read that. Ushering in a world where every step, heartbeat, and biological fluctuation is monitored not only by private companies, but also by the government. What is this? Like, you always got to think deeper, right? When they have this level of insight into your bodily functions, they can tell when you are eating, right? They can tell when you are, in engaging in pleasurable activity. They can tell when you're sleeping. They can tell all of these things. So imagine they tell you're limited to 3 cheeks a week, and if you bust a nut more than 3 times, they gonna go. You ran out of your nut busting passes, so now they gonna come after you. They gonna here it is. You violated it, so every extra, because it's bad for the economy. They charge your card, because everything is interlinked like that. So what they'll do, right, which is what makes it like a more almost like a living system, is by what's the word I'm looking for here? Connecting everything together. You now have a situation where it's not like there's somebody that detects, okay, did this person, I don't know, violate a certain law, right? When a police officer stopped them and he asked them a question, they lied, and we can tell because we can detect their heart rate or some changes in their body using technology, so we can tell that they lied, right? When they lied to an officer, now we know that. Let's go and charge their card, right? And then deduct money. There's not going to be a person that's, oh, let me find out if they lied first. Okay, now that I know they lied, let me now go in and charge their card. That's all going to be automated. It'll be linked, right? And this is just a hypothetical scenario here. So the second you do something using their surveillance and their wearables and their tracking devices, they find out you did something, it's automatically going to kick off the consequence, whether it's shutting off your card. If you're in a smart city, maybe locking you home, making you, using a electric car or whatever, the car doesn't start, like all of these things. That's like the AI, the agents. You go to open your car and your car is talking to you like, I can't let you leave now. Why don't you sit tight? The authorities are on their way. Or your car might let you open the door and it'll lock you in. Now you wait for the authorities to get you. So these sci-fi is no longer sci-fi anymore. Okay, it's now sci non-fi. Where are we at? In this emerging surveillance industrial complex, health data becomes currency. Tech firms profit from hardware and app subscriptions, insurers profit from risk scoring, and government policies profit from increased compliance and behavioral insight. And these systems exist, right? They even show you that in Black Mirror. Your actions will be, will affect your credit score. Your credit score would dictate everything in your life, right? So systems that are in place now that you thought they were created for how you're using them now are really not the case. You'd be surprised to find out that something like your credit score that they check when you go to buy a house or take out a loan or, do those kinds of things, that credit score that they check, you think it's mainly just for that. Oh, I need good credit score, so if I want to do this, I can do that. And then come to find out decades later that that was a part of an experiment to see how you can use a social credit score to control certain things. And now that they've gotten the data they need, now they're going to show you why we invented a system like the credit, your credit or your credit score and so on. This is really the main purpose. And now you're like, wait, since when since when did your credit score affect whether you can walk into a store or not? Whether you can board a plane or a train, or even call an Uber or not? Once again, it's all now automated. You have companies like Waymo. I think that's what their name is, but it's like automated, like Uber-ish kind of system. So it's not gonna be like there's a driver there that you can talk to and say like, hey, like, like, please, man, please, yo, I got money, bro. I'll give you I'll give you this, whatever. Just get me from point A to point B. It's an emergency, and then the person feels bad. Whatever, get in. Don't say nothing though. That's not AI. Doesn't do that. So if you you get there and it detects that your credit score is too low, it'll just tell you, sorry, your credit score is too low, probably cancel the ride and then drive off. You can't reason or talk or interact like that with that system. It's like you're just forced to comply. If there was even just a human being, you can explain to them like, yo, yes, I did this, but it was for a reasonable purpose. Like, I'm sure if you let me explain, you'll understand why I'm still innocent. With a system like this, did you do it? Yes. Okay, that's all I need to know. No, but let me explain. Nope. You are now deemed as a whatever. That means that I've contacted the authorities and they're on their way. Let's see. It says here, this convergence of health, technology, and surveillance. Convergence is like joining, right? Divergence is when you imagine two lines, right, all going in the same direction, and when they diverge, they split, right? So you see this right here and this right here, they're getting wider and wider, right? This is going more here, this is going more here, so they've like diverged. Converging would be if you look at it in the opposite way, right, where it's like this line is coming and this line is coming and they're getting closer together to merge. So the converging, right, or the merging together of health, technology, and surveillance is not a new strategy, right? It's just the next step in a long, familiar pattern of control. And when that time comes, we're going to get to a point where you're going to have to start resisting these things, right? And it may not be, I think that the guy mentioned it in here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. Participation may not be officially mandatory at the outset, but the implications are clear. Get on board or risk becoming a second-class citizen in a society driven by data compliance. See? And that is they will make sure that second-class citizenship, if it exists, and if you're not already in a concentration camp or whatever, it's going to be a terrible experience to where you're going to wish that let me just get on board with this. They're going to make life so difficult for you until eventually impossible. And that's going to be an uncomfortable situation for a lot of people to where they're going to be like, yo, F it, let me just go and do this. Because another form of temptation is to wear you out, right? Rather than just threaten you in a heightened situation, they'll wear you out. They'll drag it on and on and on and on and on until you're at the point where you're just like, yo, just whatever, man. This is Revelation chapter 2, verse 10. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, right? In which when you go into the word devil, right, it goes into like a slanderer or a deceiver. And we know that the one who's going to ultimately play this role is Esau Edom. And when we say Esau Edom, once again, the average Edomite that's on the street is going to be subject to this as well, right? They're going to be subject onto these measures that are put in place by the higher level Edomites, right? The elites. So when we talk about Esau, we're mainly referring to the ones who are in control, who are basically able to cause these events to happen. They're the ones. Now, they're not going to come and grab you and physically throw you in prison. They're going to give orders for their plans to be enacted. And parts of their plans include arresting and detaining dissidents or people that don't comply with their system. So that's how they cast some of us into prison, by setting up this kind of system, right? Like with the case with Daniel, where they basically set up a law to entrap him so that they could then have a reason to throw him in the lion's den. That ye may be tried. And this is important to keep in mind. The Lord is going to have this happen to some of us so that we can be tried. So if you end up in a situation like this, it's not just because the Lord is trying to destroy you. That's your test. And ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. So even if you have to end up dying, regardless of what situation you're going through, stay faithful to the Lord, because a lot of people are going to die anyway. Think about that. Like, they may threaten to chop your head off with a guillotine. Guess what? There's somebody out there in that time. There's going to be somebody out there getting shot or stabbed up or even killed by a wild animal. So death is not going to be a new thing. People are going to be dying regardless. And for some of them, it's just going to be in vain. Like, they're just going to die just because. So even if you end up dying, let it be for a reward, right? Where you remain faithful, because you could be in a concentration camp. They could threaten you. You could give in, and then they let you out, and then you end up getting hit by a car and die anyway. And at that point, you've died for nothing. But if you're in a concentration camp and you stay faithful to the Lord and you die, you've died, but you're going to gain a whole lot more. So you gain more by being faithful to the Lord, even until death. And as it says, I will give thee a crown of life. And that crown, nobody's going to be able to take away from you. This is Ecclesiasticus chapter 4, verse 28. Strive for the truth unto death, and the Lord shall fight for thee. So as long as you're willing to go as far as it takes to strive for the truth, the Lord is going to intervene. The Lord is going to fight for you. And sometimes when you're being tried, sometimes the trial really begins when you realize it's a trial. When you finally accept and say, you know what, I know what's going on. I know why this is happening. The Lord is trying me. That's when shit starts really getting tough, right? Where now it's like, damn, it just got worse. And then, damn, it's still getting worse. Yeah, because now the Lord is like, okay, finally, your head is in the game. Now let's begin the trial. So sometimes step one is realizing it's a test. And then step two is now passing the test. But I bring these precepts out to show that as they get more and more there, you're going to have to step out on faith, and you're going to have to double down, right, in your resolve, right, to stand firm for Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. No longer will you be able to, eventually you're not going to have room behind you to keep stepping back and stepping back and stepping back. Eventually our backs are going to be against the wall as they push these legislations, and they leave us with no room. But you got to have faith that, hey, the Lord is going to be on our side, and he's going to fight for us. So with that, Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kudash. And until next time, Shalom.